How important do you think innovation is to different yourself on the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a reality, right? So you need to give a customer a good reason to choose you. And that's just that is very simplistic, yes, but it is also very much real in the sense of uh, if a customer has an option between two companies or more that offer the same product or the same solution, they will choose whatever is best for them.
I'd like to welcome you to the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. My name is Byron Benton, affectionately known as Byron the Product Enthusiast. This is dedicated to product management and entrepreneurship. So please lend an ear, perhaps tune into today's episode. My name is Byron Benton, and I want to welcome everyone to the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. I am your host. Today, I have a special guest. He is a product leader. He's doing great things in the product space, and I really would like to pick his brain for a minute. And I would like everyone else to see what he has in store as well. This guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to product. We have great conversation off the radar, and this one is recorded. So I have Mr. Hector Mejia here today. How you doing today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for joining. You went out of your way to do this for me, so I really appreciate it. If you don't mind, how did you get into product to begin with? How did you become a leader? Let's talk about how you started in product and then how you became a leader.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I've been many things in my life. I'm originally from Colombia, so I
Mhm.
live right now in Denmark, and I've been in the Nordics for some years now, like a good almost a decade. So I guess that makes me a Nordic at this point. But I started actually. I did my bachelor in engineering in mechatronics. Uh, I end up working with the medical devices and kind of in giving support, technical support to ventilators and monitors and things like that. And that was all great. But I also then somehow moved, and this is the 2010s, right? So when everybody was aiming to have a website and an app and everything. So with the explosion of internet, it became a thing that all companies wanted to have their own digital presence. So I started a company uh, or like a digital agency working on basically developing websites and developing apps. So that's kind of how we got into digital products, if you want. And then I start teaching designers, which uh, there is this cool interaction design program in Cali, in Colombia, where I come from, where I was doing some teaching, kind of training designers in how to do web development and mobile development. And I got into design, and I was like, okay, actually, design is pretty cool. This interaction design, and start kind of building new knowledge on human computer interaction and kind of understanding human behavior and a little bit of mechanics of decision making and things like that. So I got into design. That was what took me into to the Nordics. So I did a master degree in Umeå University in the north of Sweden, and then after finishing the master, I got a job offer for a company in Norway, which is the company that I work for now, that is
Okay.
called Lerdal Medical, and as a designer, as a product designer. And then I've been kind of climbing the ranks uh, since I started there, and now I'm a design director in one of the areas, and so I'm part of the product leadership. Like with a VP of product, design director, that's me, and then a tech director. So we are kind of the trio, and that's how we are organized, and it's the product leadership in the area. And we work with virtual simulation. So this is the healthcare
Ah,
space, or the healthcare training space, healthcare education, and there's a lot of stuff around simulation. So I'm not completely sure how much your audience will know about simulation. Likely not that much because it's not the most common of topics. It's kind of a very niche topic, but we are a big player in that space in simulation in general. And right now, I'm mainly focused on the virtual part of it. So working with VR, with XR, with screen-based training, things like that. So, but that's how I got into product. It's been like growing the ranks, and I've done development, I've done design, I've done product, I've done businesses. So I kind of have done all of the roles, and I guess that's what took me and got me into leadership.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. 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 So, what's the most important lessons you've learned over the years? Because you've worked in different capacities. Is there a particular lesson, or maybe more than one, that you've learned over the years that you want to share?
Yeah, there's definitely many of them. I guess I think there's a couple of things, right? There is this. We are probably moving into an area an era of solopreneurs, right? It's
Mhm.
like people
Yeah.
kind of building up and kind of having a foundation on some type of AI work that will do a lot of the stuff for them, and then there will be people basically with ideas that will be able to develop those ideas into products. And that is, I think, that is a likely future that we are moving towards.
Yeah, because I'm one of them. I want to do it too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. But I have to say that one of the things that I believe will become a huge challenge in this world is that I do think that I actually think the biggest resource of any company is people.
yeah.
uh, and growing people and growing the competences and the kind of the mission of the company, aligning and focusing your people is probably the most important thing that anybody in leadership needs to be doing. And that includes product leadership. So if you think that product leadership and successful products is all about having great ideas and awesome innovation, uh, sure, but it is fueled by uh, you know growing your competence and your people's competences, so you actually build these things. Because although there will be more and more cases of people trying to do this alone, I actually think that's just a hell of a difficult road to travel. So building up your people, amazing thing to do. Uh, Definitely the competence and the skills that you need to develop the most if you are planning on growing in terms of leadership. It's like becoming a good leader is the most important thing that you will do. Um, Understanding what good leadership is, building good trust, you know, nurturing your talents. I think that's the most important skill that we all need to develop if people are really looking into become leaders in product, right? In any aspect of product. So that's a key lesson for sure. And I think another one, and this is one that is a little bit slightly painful for me because I am by nature a very impatient person. Uh, but I think change and progress takes time. And I
Yes.
think we just sometimes don't value that, right? So
Mhm.
we become so entangled in the idea that we need to be successful, that things needs to happen now, and I think this is not a sprint. It's like product is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Uh, it's about resiliency. It's about grit. It's about not quitting. It's about
Failure,
navigating
about failure too,
adversities.
maybe, maybe a little
It's about
failure.
failure for sure, and probably a lot of failures for per every success that you actually have. So building up your resiliency is also incredibly important. It's like if we are not prepared to overcome some of those challenges and maybe take some of those hits, go through some of those difficult patches, then you are probably not really ready for the success part of it. So I
Gotcha.
think those are probably the main things that I always think about it when I think about my path, and it's actually nothing related to nor product, nor design, nor tech, nor anything like that. So,
Yeah, but it's the philosophy though. It's the
yeah.
you know psychology of it still.
It is, and I do think that is successful products are or meaningful innovation happens sometimes in spite of humans, but usually because of humans. So I think and good people, right? Uh, so I think it's just sometimes undervalued, or at least because it's the most difficult resource to get. Also, it's like get good people and grow your people. And I mean, and let's not kid ourselves. When you start a company, you probably don't have the financial means to actually have people.
Mhm.
So we tend to underestimate and maybe undervalue a little bit the importance of that. But along the way, you realize how important it is for sure.
Okay, gotcha. Excuse me. What's the importance? Well, first, what does innovation mean to you when it comes to product and coming up with great applications, websites, etc.? What is
Yeah, I
innovation?
think there is maybe a notion that innovation is coming out with new ideas or new ways of doing things, and there is truth to that, of course. Um, but I think I love to quote actually the managing director of the site where I'm located at, which is in Copenhagen, uh, and he has always said there is no innovation without impact.
Mm,
And I truly, truly believe that because I think we can come out with a lot of new things, but that doesn't really represent any innovation. Like
mm,
innovation is impact,
mm,
right? And I think impact can be many, many things. Usually for profit companies, there is a sense of revenue that is connected to impact, but it's usually the less important thing of it. So, impact is adding value to your customers and your users, doing it fast, you know, and having a good experience through it.
mm.
And if you and it's not a sum. So it's not value plus UX plus speed. It's actually a multiplication, right? So if you have something very low in one of these, so if you have a great UX that adds a lot of value, but it takes you forever to launch, that's no impact,
Yeah.
right? But you can also have amazing value, super fast, terrible UX. That's also not impact. So you do need to have three, like in a balance levels. You actually get, um, you get a good grasp of what impact really is. And in our very specific sector or segment, we also add learning value because we are in the higher education space. So for us, uh, it is value is also deliver or is also kind of on the type of learning experiences that we deliver. But in general, I will say that is the value that your customers get out of using your product that you put into their hands as fast as you can with a good enough UX that they can actually, tap into that value that you are meant to deliver. And if those three things are not there, then there is no innovation. There is no impact, and in my very personal opinion, then there is no innovation. I think a good example of this has been, like if you think about it, like the Google glasses, that was a fantastic example. It's
Yeah.
like it was a cool new thing, a cool new gadget, right? But there was never clarity on what the value that it was offering.
Mm,
It took forever to really get into the hands of the people that back it up.
yeah.
And the experience using it was not as advertised. And I think all of those three things meant that it never kind of went off. So it never really worked as it was meant. And we're talking that this is Google, right? So this is a
Yeah.
company with all the resources, with amazing, brilliant designers, product people, and engineers. So it's not like a small company. So and this is a big failure. Um, it didn't really ruin the company at all. So it wasn't really that bad for Google. But they did fail on it. And I think it's because they had these things were not there, these three things. And it did look amazing. It's like
Yeah.
the idea of what they were delivering was awesome, right?
It was. In fact, thinking about what you're saying, I was supposed to wear glasses since I was 10 years old, but I never could get around the idea with putting that hardware, if you will, around my face. And I also kind of wonder if that's the issue with VR as well, just the extra steps. I don't know if people, I don't know, people want something so convenient that even with VR, they're getting smaller and smaller when they come to headsets. So they're trying to get, bare bones as well from what I've seen. It used to be these big blocky eye glasses, and now they're getting slimmer as well, more lean.
I, and it definitely still is too bulky, and that's the huge challenge of that modality. I mean, we do have products that are targeting both VR and mixed reality, and especially our VR one is quite successful right now, or at least is really showing promise of becoming a very successful product. The mixed reality one is a little bit more, is a different story. We are still very, very early on the stages, but we have really seen that the operational burden is complex. And solving that operational burden is the most important challenge or the most important risk that we need to be really working on, because I think the adoption of this type of more kind of devices will not be as the phone. The convenience of the phone is just
Yeah.
unmatched.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can get there with the VR headsets.
I
So
don't think.
maybe the technology improves enough that the burden is not that big, and then people want to overcome it because the value is so big. But so far, I don't think we have been able to deliver enough tangible value that you want to overcome the complexity of using a headset. And we are talking about like professional spaces, right? So of course for home, that's no problem. It's like having it as a game device, no problem whatsoever. It's like, it can be uncomfortable from time to time. People get tired, sure, but there is appeal, there is value that is delivered, and you are willing to go through that obstacle because you want the entertainment. I think in a professional space, it's difficult to believe that our customers will uh, overcome that burden, or that it will be easy. So there's a lot of work that we are putting into trying to solve the operational challenge of managing devices and reducing the use of the device to their bare minimum. Uh, but I think that we have a constraint, a tech constraint that we will need to deal with, which is how small and convenient
Yeah.
can our people can Meta make these devices.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we have the Oculus or some type of a Apple Vision Pro that is like
I
using glasses, then
saw
we're
that.
talking. Then we're talking.
You know, speaking about the convenience factor, I used to like these big phones. I'm talking about the ones that would stick out of my pocket. You could
Yeah.
actually see my phone sticking out my pocket. And although I really like that, it was almost like having a laptop in my pocket. I found out that sometimes smaller is better. There's a convenience, there's a level that it becomes too big.
Yeah.
I would love this grandiose screen in my pocket, but do I is it worth the convenience of it? So then I get back to the 6.5 inch screen, and I don't know. So even when it comes to cell phones, I think
Yeah, you're right. I mean, cell phones are. I do think that they were growing and growing and growing, almost to the point of becoming tablets. And then you lose that convenience, and then
yeah,
there
where
is
you
a
gonna
reason
store it? You
why.
can't put it in your pocket.
Exactly. And then there is a reason why they have stopped growing. Like right now, what is Apple trying to do, right? So they are trying to optimize the space, so the screen, making it that it use, keeping the size of the phone the same, but making the screen use almost all the surface, right?
Yeah.
What is Samsung trying to do? Trying to do these foldable devices, because you get the same size, the same footprint with kind of double the screen size. And I think that's probably where these type of things will go. And I like to think of, I mean, this is actually what UX in the core means. Like, I think right now we feel that UX is more like a digital interaction UI type of work, and it's not really that. It's also not only UX research, which is also what some companies do, uh, or label this type of work. But UX, when we talk about the user experience, is exactly this, right? So it's like how easy and how convenient it is to use something that you own or that you have. And I think there is this theory, which I find fantastic, that says that UX is friction, right? And I like that too. And I think it means that uh, our customers or users were like, if you have like fire right in the middle, let's say a cost and between your customer and the value that you are trying to deliver, if the value is big enough, customers will kind of try to jump over the fire or try to go through the fire because the value is so big, right? And that's the friction. So what we need to do usually as designers and when we are working in product at the speed of what things are going now is to reduce that friction and increase that value so the customer is willing to go over whatever fire is left, right? And I think that's great. And I think that's a great way of looking at it because perfect interactions, perfect kind of experience of using a product is almost impossible and it's also almost a waste of time. So can you reduce the friction enough that the value that you are delivering is worth it going through that friction? That's the balance that you need to achieve, right? In my mind.
Definitely. How important, even when it comes to innovation, how important is that to different yourself from other products and companies that are on the market? I think sometimes, let's say if Target is going against Walmart and they're neck and neck, sometimes the big companies they don't want to innovate too much because then they're kind of disrupting their natural flow. So how important do you think innovation is to different yourself on the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a reality, right? So you need to give a customer a good reason to choose you. And that is very simplistic, yes, but it is also very much real in the sense of uh, if a customer has an option between two companies or more that offer the same product or the same solution, they will choose whatever is best for them. And you need to provide that best. You need to provide those arguments so your customers select you. Sometimes that means that you differentiate in the sense of doing the same thing in a different way, right? Sometimes it means that you do the same thing in an easier way.
Mhm.
So and sometimes it may mean that you do the same thing at a lower cost. And that is just all are those different ways of looking at it, right? And I think what we need to understand from the product perspective is like, where do we live in that sea of possibilities? It's like, what makes more sense for my company? Is it to figure out a new way of doing this? Is it to figure out a cheaper way to do this, or is it to figure it out? And sometimes it's all of those, right? But that depends a lot on the context that you are. So I think innovation in that sense, that is exactly what innovation means in the sense of like, how do we deliver this impact with the more impact that you can deliver, right? And the more impact goes through the more value with the best experience possible with the fastest pace possible, right? But achieving all of those at the same time is almost impossible. So you need to balance them out. Uh, and I think in a way, companies trying to differentiate each other, that's the nature of the game. But I don't think there is a silver bullet. I don't think there is one way of differentiate yourself. Um, you can also rely on a lot of other things. Uh, that's why it's difficult for new companies sometimes, right? Because more established companies will already have the trust of their customers. So even if what you are kind of if your offering is not better than your new company coming up, sometimes the trust that you have already built is enough to make the customers prefer you.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's in spaces where trust is so important. I think, and kind of the brand equity is so important. I think new companies have a tough time, uh, and they really need to deliver something completely different, like in many ways,
Mhm.
for them to really win over those customers, right? And that's where it becomes really, really tough, and where innovation is kind of a path. But I think and that's where disruption happens, right? And I think disruption is the natural way of things. It's like systems, they tend to organize themselves and get into kind of a stasis, right? So they are kind of stable, and then the only way to move things again is to actually add some disruption and add some chaos. And I just think that that's the natural way of things. And at some point, all industries are disrupted. It's like
Change.
that always happen. It's like I don't think there's well maybe I don't know, maybe even the banking system, if you think about it.
Mhm. Just
It's
like the
like
life cycle
yeah,
of our life. I think maybe the product life cycle is the same. When you ever go back home, do you ever say, "Wow, this road wasn't here," or this wasn't here when I was a kid?
yeah,
And everything
exactly.
changes. Nothing stays the same. It's going to change. It don't matter if it's I don't know if it's 10 years or 20 years. But what I found out is everything changes. I don't think product is any different, and something's going to change.
Yes.
You know.
Something is gonna change always. And if you are not changing, then something is wrong. I
Hmm.
mean, I think there are very, very few cases, if any, of companies that have successful products that don't change at all,
Hmm.
that don't evolve with the needs of your customer base. It's almost impossible. And like the more I think about it, it's like the more I believe that success from a product perspective is not it's not a moment. It's not like now I'm successful. It's a continuous, right? So it's like at this point I'm starting to become successful, and then only if I maintain that level of success, then I can label myself or my product successful. Um, and that requires that you adapt and that you move and that you pivot and that you adapt to the ever evolving needs of your customer base. So static products are probably dead products.
What do you think? How can companies balance the tightrope between um, meeting the needs and expectation of customers, but also pushing the boundaries of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only, like to be honest, the only way to meet those ever-changing needs their customers is to actually push the boundaries of innovation. It's like
Hmm.
it's the only way. The only way is to keep becoming better, keep becoming more efficient, keep becoming faster, keep becoming like improving your experience and delivering even more value. So it's the only way. So you need to be innovating all the time. It's like, you know, in our current kind of product or like a modern product development space, innovation is the only way. It's like you are not if we think about innovation from the perspective that I mentioned, right? So through impact, through these three things that you are balancing out all the time. If you are not working towards improving and optimizing any of those three things, then you are not really doing your work. And then the product is probably not, it's probably not, doesn't offer value enough, or it's probably not feasible enough and viable enough. So in a way, there is no balance to make. It's like you are in constant need of innovation in a way.
Okay. 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 Let me ask you. Let me ask you. When it comes to feedback,
Mm.
how important is it to gather it? Not only gather it, but gather it quickly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can fix issues before they become big issues.
Yeah.
As opposed to waiting the whole year, and now it's this big snowball or big boulder of a snowball. You know.
Yeah. I think we the way that we like to work, we work in this continuous um, feedback loop, if you want, right? Uh, where we are all the time trying to look into how are people using our products? What do we see in the data? What do we see in what people answer on on our satisfaction surveys, or even if it's in product or is kind of because we work in a B2B, then sometimes we also have stuff that is out of the product, but we also gather feedback in the product, right?
Yeah.
So we are monitoring that continuously and assessing how relevant and important things become. Uh, so it's a constant reprioritization of things. So the more evidence you gather that something is relevant and important, the easier it is to prioritize it in your backlog, right? And that's the whole point of it. So if you are gathering that feedback and you're getting that and feedback is not only directly from your customers from like satisfaction surveys or like comments or support tickets or things like that, but it's also what they do with the product. So instrumenting your product is the only way to make this actually work. So you actually need to get data on how your people are using the product, which is increasingly easier for digital products, right? So it's become easier every day to really get proper meaningful data. So you have that data stream all the time. You have comments coming in, you have feedback coming in. You are going out talking to your customers and seeing how they use your product. And you are gathering that evidence, and it will at some point show that things need to be that there are something relevant that needs to be done, right? Um, and it's hopefully way before it's a huge deal. But it can also be that sometimes you make something and then something really bad happen, and then you need to deal with it immediately. But that's a different story. Like in the normal cycle of the product, it's like you are gathering all this data continuously, and in every cycle of your product, and that depends if you work in Scrum or Kanban or any other delivery methodology. In every cycle of your product, uh, you assess the new learnings and say, have we gathered new evidence that shows something different, or have we gathered more evidence on this issue that we identified 3 cycles ago? It's like, oh yeah, it's increasingly frustrating for our customers. So then you prioritize it. So I will say that it's critical. Like I cannot imagine, like, no, I can't imagine, but I really think that it's very difficult for product teams to do their job well if they don't get this constant feedback loop. If they don't have that, it's like, how do you know what you're doing? It's like you're basically driving, blind with a blindfold.
I agree. I agree. What about AI? Let's talk about the future of innovation. Do you think that AI is going to play a big part, or is it going to hinder the creativity and take
Yeah,
all the jobs because no one's creative anymore because all the creativity is coming from AI?
I think that is. I mean, there is definitely a world where where we become lazier to think by ourselves. But I don't think it's necessarily something that is like, I don't think we have enough evidence that that's where we're going. Uh, so I'm not terribly concerned about that. I do think that AI has a role to play. I don't think it's the role to play is to replace the human, because I do think that there is no meaningful innovation, or there's no meaningful development happening even in AI without a human interaction. Uh, Now, there are things, having said that, there are things that I do believe that the AI will replace. So, and I think this is especially true for like, user interfaces, if we work in the digital space, because I think in a way we have already reduced the uncertainty of a lot of the interactions. It's like, we know how a login should be, we know how onboarding should be, no need to redesign those things. No need to redesign. Like, we know what good spacing is. We know what good color contrast is.
Mhm,
There's enough examples out there. There's enough knowledge. There's enough research. There's enough everything.
mhm,
So we don't really need to redesign those things. So that means that those are the things where AI will excel,
mhm,
right? So I
mhm.
do expect a world where you say, hey, this is what I want to achieve with the product. Can you make me, a good UI for it?
Yeah,
Uh, That I can see that happening,
yeah.
because I think that's where, like, that's where we don't necessarily need humans anymore. Of course, that will also imply that we will have more and more of the same. So that is true. I think that is the challenge there, right? So if you want to differentiate yourself, then AI will probably not be the way.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. But I don't think that it will go beyond that, right? I have seen a lot of people telling this, or not a lot, but I have seen people talk about the idea of using AI or like some chat GPT like interface where you kind of have discussions to come out with new ideas.
Yeah, I think it's good for that though. I gotta think it's
Yeah.
good.
And I think that is great. Uh, but is the AI really giving you new ideas? This is just our collective knowledge.
I think it's
Um,
got collective knowledge.
Yeah, and I think tapping into the collective knowledge is an amazing ability. So we do need to do that. But at the end of the day, it is the human driving that discussion, that conversation, or that chat, the one that is really coming out and producing something novel and something interesting. So I'm really not scared of AI replacing a lot of jobs, but I do think that it will have an impact.
I do too.
There is like Marty Kagan has this really interesting article, or I think he published it maybe a couple of weeks ago or so, about his take on AI and how teams that today are maybe a 10 people team will probably become a 3 people team.
Mm,
Like that I can see.
yeah,
It's
me
like,
too.
that I can see. Because I do think that AI will bring productivity gains, efficiency gains, uh, that will make that will reduce the need for many, many people. But that will also mean that we will have more and more people focus in the most important things, in the most interesting things, um, which is actually solving and understanding the needs from your users and really figuring out a way to solve them, right? And then those people will be really equipped because they have that context knowledge and probably the technical knowledge will be very equipped to use AI tools to really produce something. So I do think that the delivery part of the work will be affected. Of course, that has consequences. It may be that some people will lose their jobs.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
that is likely.
yeah,
Um, it's not nice. It's not interesting. It's not good in itself. But that also will mean that it will be easier and easier to actually create new products and new things.
yeah.
So the likely consequence is that we will have more and more products, more and more alternatives. So I think that it could go in well, in many ways, but I can think of two very drastically different ways. So one where we have a world where for everything that you want to do, you have a multitude of options, and then it's a selection, it's a preference base, and I think that would be cool. Everybody will have a customer base. It's just nobody will be a huge dominant uh, company in a specific sector or market.
Okay, let me ask you.
So yeah.
This thing's gonna cut off Zoom, and it does only do 40 minutes. I didn't pay for the full Zoom. Let me ask you the last question.
Yeah.
If you have a bit of advice for anyone that wants to get into innovation, what would you say? And we could mix that in with how to get in touch with you as well. If we could do both in 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. A good advice. Get great at understanding and working with people. That's the best thing that you can do.
So thanks for watching today's episode of the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. Again, my name is Byron Benton, and I am your host, affectionately known as Byron the Product Enthusiast. Please like, subscribe, and tune in. Until next time, thanks for watching.